We'll be able to see people coming.
Adam, I could talk to you forever. Seems like I'm so excited with what you guys are doing, though. I never
yeah,
did.
yeah. If you need any resources, feel free to talk to me because we can kind of set you up with, the NRCS out there as well.
Yeah.
Also.
We love Adam. He is the
Yeah.
best pal of the gardens, and we all have plants. He brought us like his aster to share, and so there's
Yeah.
Adam's aster at the and there's Adam's aster in my front yard, and
Yeah.
you're very good at sharing your
Oh,
stuff.
you bet. So I have so many plants I love just giving out when they start, to volunteer. So.
Oops.
Yeah.
Did not raise my hand here. Uh-oh. How do I get that done?
I won't call on you then.
How do they do that? Oopsie, hold on.
It's one of the buttons down on the toolbar.
Oh, let me move this then.
Yeah. Now it'll say lower hand somewhere on your like.
Oh, there it is. Got it. Okay.
Cool. And actually, I'm going to share my screen to Kitty's website.
I meant to tell you, if someone asks if they want a very detailed rundown on certain things, I am going to refer them to the amazing Springfield Community Gardens YouTube channel, where we have tons of amazing videos and they can learn it all. So, yeah.
I will also pull that up, so I'll put it in the chat.
Cool.
Which usually ends up happening anyway. I'm like always in YouTube trying to copy and paste. All right. Well, people will still start trickling in, but I'm going to go ahead and start us off. So my name is Anna Withers. I'm with Springfield Community Gardens. And if you are not from, or if you're not local, we are a nonprofit started in 2010, and we have right now 17 community gardens, all led by volunteers. We have 3 urban farms, which are staffed by our employees. We have a community food forest and a test kitchen that we provide to people developing value-added products, sourcing locally, farmers trying to diversify their income, and things of that nature. And this webinar is generously funded by the USDA Office of Partnerships and Public Engagement, their 2501 grant. And we're really glad to be doing this. We've put on a ton of workshops and webinars with Springfield Compost Collective in the past, and there seem to be more and more soil enthusiasts popping up everywhere and really realizing the importance of soil health and the role that composting makes in that. So really happy to be here. I will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A functions, so please try to help keep those separate. Make sure to put your actual questions into the Q&A, and yeah, we will get to it here in just a minute. But we are also joined by a very dear friend of the gardens, Adam Coulter. He's a district conservationist with the USDA Office of Natural Resources, NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service. So he's going to share a little bit about our local programming to help support those efforts. So I will stop sharing, Adam, if you would like to go ahead and start sharing.
Okay, great, wonderful. So I just want to first off say that I really appreciate Anna inviting me here to talk about the programs that we have. One of the good things about the partnerships that we have here in the Springfield area and in Southwest Missouri is that we all learn from one another. Not everyone is an expert, and so I learned a lot from Anna. I've been learning a lot from Justine just over the last couple of minutes as well. And so one of the great things is that we are here to help people with questions, with technical services and advice, as well as financial resources too. And so with that said, whether you are, attending right now or whether you might be looking at this later on the website as well, don't hesitate to contact, your local resources because, again, we're here to help you out as well. So with that said, I'm just going to do just a kind of a short little presentation here about who I am, who I work for, what we do, and then I'm going to gloss over some basic things, but I won't really talk about them because I know that Justine will be talking about them as well. So, but with that said, if everyone can see my screen here, I'm going to just kind of talk about again composting programs, for rural and urban operations, because compost is very, very important. And so, again, as Anna said, my name is Adam Coulter. I work for the United States Department of Agriculture, so the USDA. Now, of course, I don't tell people that because they think I inspect milk and cheese, and I know nothing about food processing or food inspections whatsoever. Um, I actually work for the Conservation Service, which is a subsidiary of the USDA. But if you think about it, the USDA was actually formed back in 1862. Our agency, that is the Natural Resources Conservation Service, was established in the 1930s in the wake of the Dust Bowl, where, in areas such as, the Dakotas, such as Oklahoma, Kansas, things were over-tilled. We had a drought, and it was a perfect storm where the agricultural industry was devastated due to weather, climate, and the bad use of the land. And so again, what my job is really to help people out, helping the land. So again, I help people help the land, if that makes sense. So this is the agency I work for, the Natural Resources Conservation Service. We provide free technical and conservation services to anybody that has, whether you might have 1 acre, a quarter acre, or 1,500 acres. That's what our job is to help you out manage your land. So we work with you through a conservation planning process. Um, I do this with Springfield Community Gardens. They're one of my favorite clients, of course. And again, all the services are free, but we you as the landowner are the decision maker. We don't tell you what to do. We give you advice, give you options of how to better manage the land for now and in the future. We also administer some financial conservation programs for you to implement as well. So because the ideas that we have, cost money. And so the federal government allocates money aside to actually help you implement those practices, whether it might be a high tunnel, whether it might be a compost bin, whether it might be a fence, and so forth as well. So again, we basically fund and technically advise farms, small lot areas, even in urban areas, for infrastructural and management conservation practices. These are things that we don't really think about, but you know what? A compost facility is a conservation practice, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit as well. So the two conservation programs I'm going to talk about is the Compost Food and Waste Reduction Program. And this is a national program that really helps to facilitate communities in establishing a composting process and organization in their communities. And the other one is called the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. And what this program is for is to address compost on site, whether it's generated or whether you're utilizing it for a small farm, be it 3 acres, be it a quarter acre, be it your backyard. It's very, very important. And so some of the things that I'll be talking about here just briefly, if you have any questions, just feel free to put it in the chat. feel free to, contact us later or contact Anna, and we can get you the information that you need. But when it comes to the compost food and waste reduction program, this is a national grant. It's a national program that nonprofit organizations can apply for, that cities and municipalities and businesses can apply for. And basically what it is, it's to assist local and municipal, organizations, governments, nonprofits to develop and test strategies for implementing a community compost institution, if you will, which is very, very important, from reducing, the load of waste that goes into the landfill and to producing a product that can be used locally as well. And that's very important. And I'll be talking about that here shortly. Here's the website for this. And so, Anna, I'll be sure to email you my PowerPoint here, so you have it and you can upload it as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll include that link and everything too. And I
okay,
can send along information.
okay, wonderful, wonderful. So this is actually the web page that takes you to that, and it tells you how to apply for the grant itself, the different releases, the webinar for applicants, fact sheet and so forth. Unfortunately, the deadline for this year's was just a couple days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, but it'll be coming up again, because just to give you some background, the USDA out of Washington, D.C. is establishing urban agriculture as a priority. And this just, doesn't mean that we're talking about big cities. We're also talking about small farms in rural areas that don't have, the facilities to establish a productive agricultural operation. So it's very, very important that we address all the sectors of society as well. With that said, here is just a picture of, or a fact sheet. I also emailed this to Anna about this particular program itself. And as you can see from fiscal year 20 to 23, it's increased by basically $10 million. So again, what we're looking at here over the next couple of years is the funding for urban agriculture is increasing, which is a great thing. And we want to make sure, even though I work for the federal government, that this is your tax dollars, that it's being used wisely, and it goes back to the communities that really need it the most as well. So again, that was the national grant. The other one program is the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. And this one is also national. So if you happen to live in Colorado, Arkansas, California, you are eligible, if you have a farm or even a backyard, you're eligible to apply for this. There's no fee. It's a free process. And so this is where the federal government requests money for you and for your operation to implement these structural and management conservation practices on your property. And this can include fencing systems and watering systems for rotational grazing for cattle livestock. We do a lot of that here in Southwest Missouri. If you live in a heavily cultivated area like northern Missouri or Minnesota or Iowa, there's money for terraces and drainage systems for cropland. There's also forest management practices as well. So we do a lot of that here in Southwest Missouri as well, whether it might be planting trees or thinning out a stand of woods so the trees are more healthy in the long term. Pollinators are very, very important as well, especially for crop production, just for agriculture in general, since they pollinate, the plants that provide us food. And then, of course, for smaller farms, smaller agricultural operations and backyard gardens, we provide assistance and financial assistance for high tunnels, which are very similar to greenhouses, and compost facilities, and also just general practices for smaller farms as well. So again, a lot of people don't really realize, the benefits out there in of the different programs. But again, you know what? If I said before, if you live in Arizona, Colorado, Arkansas, we can make sure we find you the right person to contact as well.
Hey,
Um,
Adam, before
yes.
you move forward, so I didn't realize that composting facilities were allowed through Equip. So that's new information for me.
It
Is that
it
new to the program
It
or?
really is. It really is. So even here in Missouri, we are looking at different urban conservation practices that can be, where money is allocated for them. And so a compost facility certainly is. And the reason being, and that's a great question, Anna, is that soil health is so important. We don't really think about that. I don't like the D word, but it's called dirt. We call it soil, but people refer to it as dirt sometimes. But really, our soils nationwide really aren't the best. As I said before, during the Dust Bowl era, we lost a lot of soil. Um, Here in Southwest Missouri, in the Ozarks, northern Arkansas, we have very, very poor soils. That's why we don't have cropland here. Okay, so we just have grazing land because we can't really grow the crops because our soils aren't conducive for it. And one of the issues is we have low organic matter, and that's where compost comes in. That's why compost is so important. It's compost is almost worth its weight in gold in areas like Southwest Missouri. And so there is a market, an economic market for compost, whether it's your back garden or whether it might be a 40-acre grazing pasture. It's very, very important because again, that compost, that organic matter adds so much to the growth and to the health of that soil unit. So that's a great point.
Yeah, some of our farmers note that they don't grow produce, the
Mhm.
soil grows produce.
Yes, that's
And
right.
I like that reminder, and it
That is
helps give
right.
value to the land. So what would be eligible expenses, like, pouring concrete paths or getting
Yes,
wood or stuff to construct some sort of composting,
absolutely. Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
some machinery to
Yes.
turn or?
Correct, correct. So for like a composting facility, depending upon the size of what the compost facility is, for like larger institutions, be it a hospital, be it a business, be it a chicken facility, we can help pay for the concrete and for the shed and for the wood to do that. And I'll show you some pictures here later on. But also just for a basic backyard composter, a basic 3-bin composter that you can see, on the internet and find different designs for it. That's something that we would be able to help out. And even though the paperwork might be complex, that's what our job as conservationists are, is to really help you out to achieve your goal of creating compost, of planting a hedgerow of shrubs or of mulching around your trees that you plant as well. So there's many things that can be done. And so with that said, just like I was saying, Anna, is that here in the Ozarks, Southwest Missouri, Northwest Arkansas, and I'm sure there's other areas too throughout the United States, which are very much similar to us, is that our soil has low organic matter. And so, one complaint that, Anna gets a lot from people that she works with that come to visit the Springfield Community Gardens that I work with is if they try to create a garden, they're pulling rocks out, and we don't have that great nutritious soil that northern Missouri has or Iowa has. But that's just because of our topography and other issues as well. That's why we don't really grow crops in this area or in Northwest Arkansas, because we don't have that good nutritious soil that other areas have. So we have low organic matter. We also sometimes have a fragipan, which is a constrictive layer of like clay that, really doesn't allow water or roots to break through. So it's a restrictive layer. And also too, especially, if you live in a neighborhood or so, or if you live in an urban area, those soils have been disturbed. They're compacted. Okay, so it's not the original soils. And so we always have to build up soils. One of the great things that people like to do when it comes to backyard gardening and food production is they like to do raised beds. And so compost is an excellent media to use for those raised beds. No doubt about that. So our goal is really to, if we could, make almost like potted soil. That's very, very important. And so, it takes time for soil to develop, millions of years, if you will. But if we add compost to a pasture, to a garden, we're replenishing that soil, and it's going to stay there as well, which is important. So again, and Justine's going to be talking a little bit more about this here later on, but I just want to show you one slide here that really, when it comes to that practice of that compost facility that we can assist financially, we can justify it for citizen tax dollars through the federal government because we are reusing organic waste, be a banana peel, be it grass clippings or leaves, as a soil amendment that will provide soil conditioning and slow release plant available nutrients and plant disease suppression. So that's what the purpose is that we're amending that soil by breaking this down. And then, really the objective is really to facilitate that microbial action in order to break down that material. And this is something that Justine has talked about in the previous seminars as well. And again, that's what we're shooting for. Okay. Now, it might take many, many years to have, a soil unit like that, but it definitely helps out with food and other types of production as well. So again, one of the things that we're going to be looking at is here in the next couple weeks, because I'll be going up to our state office in Columbia in mid September to have a meeting to talk about how are we going to, get the word out about, getting people to be interested in, doing a backyard composter. And so we'll be looking at different types of composter techniques that may or may not work, and that we, as the federal government, may be able to provide financial resources to. Of course, there are commercial composting facilities as well. We see a lot of these with chicken houses and poultry houses in southern Missouri, on the southern Missouri-Arkansas border. But this could also be done in an urban area, with a hospital. It could be done with a school. So when you think about all the waste that is generated by meals and that are thrown away into the landfill, this is a great way, really, really to create compost, if you will. All you need is some concrete that the federal government would help out with, the wood to build a shed to protect it. And if you have a tractor, that's good, because we have to kind of turn over that compost as well. And again, one of the most important things is that we're looking for the benefit of the future generations. And this little friend of mine is the daughter of a landowner that I work with. And since the day she was born, she's been learning about composting, learning about growing vegetables in her mother's high tunnel. And as you can see here, she's picking up a worm, and there's nothing better, to see a child pick up a worm. Most people are scared of that, but my little friend here, she's fearless when it comes to working and getting her hands dirty in the soil. So again, we're thinking about our future generation, and because we want to conserve that soil, amend it, make it better, so they can grow healthy food and plants in the future as well. So with that said, I'd be more than happy to, answer any questions or any questions in the near future. Just feel free to contact Anna as well. And again, it's a pleasure working with Anna and Justine. Again, this is an effort, that takes a community to work together. And if we can get the word out about this, and as the people that are viewing this as well can get the word out, that would be great. That would be great as well. So I certainly appreciate it, Anna.
Thank you so much, Adam, for
Okay,
the
and I will
kind
stop
words and
sharing.
for sharing that
Mhm.
information. I did just drop a link to the Equip program into the chat, and I'll make sure to help circulate that.
Okay.
But that's really wonderful. I'm excited to tell people about that one
Okay.
because I definitely know some folks who could be interested.
Okay. Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, and while we're on the topic of just more local resources, I wanted to share a couple quick things. We're based out of Springfield, Missouri, so these will be more local to our folks. But a lot of cities do have composting programs, and around here we have the Springfield Compost Collective, which is why, we invite them and we rely on them to help share information about all of this. So I won't take away Justine's thunder with that, but I will include that link because they have business pickup and residential services and community bins that are very helpful to our town. And then more recently, the city of Springfield has a Dish to Dirt program, which teaches residents about home composting. And so it's classes, and they help provide the materials to enable you to start composting at home. And I'm putting that link in there as well. And then I've also heard that Hanson's Tree Service has a compost or a food scrap pickup program. Do you know about that, Justine? I know you're out of town now.
I was on a video call with them a long time ago about that potentially. I thought it was more business. Like I didn't think that they would ever do residential because, in all honesty, there's not a lot of money in picking up residential composting. There's a lot of expenses and very little money that comes in. So it's hard for big businesses to justify that expense from my experience. But I do know that they have commercial pickups for larger commercial businesses. Like they have the ability to pick up from factories and stuff, big sizes. And we focus on more smaller businesses.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's all I know. That's all I know. I know there's another service too in town. What is his name? What is it called? I think there's 3 of us, and I don't want to leave him out, and I'm blanking right now. Oh my gosh. There's another service that does commercial in town as well. And
You'll think of it. You'll think all good. But yeah, I'm really happy to see so many different options because, a lot of people do go into work somewhere, and maybe they can help move the needle and bring it up to management and just start conversations about how important it is that we divert waste, especially food waste, from the landfill. Because in Springfield, District O, like our landfill is filling way faster than they were anticipating. And I'm told the bulk of it is food waste. And that's so sad because we know how hard our farmers work to grow wonderful food. And, it shouldn't be wasted. Hunger and food insecurity is a huge issue. And, it takes effort. It takes a lot of mindfulness, but it's very important for our bodies and our community health and the health of our planet.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't have you hooked yet, let's then the Q&A because there are quite a few questions that people have sent in ahead of time. So thank you so much if that was you, or if that person's watching this later, great. But we wanted to, if there is someone who is attending this live, and if you have a pressing question, please feel free, use the Q&A function and we will prioritize your questions. But otherwise, I mean, I'll start us off with a question, a personal question about my composting situation. So I am in town and we do a lot of yard work. So we get a lot of yard waste. I do put like food scraps back there. But we've had a lot of trouble getting a good routine down. And I don't have a lot of time. I also have a little one. So the act of I don't know how often I'm supposed to turn. It's a neglected pile of food scraps that we cover with like sawdust and stuff. It's shameful, but I'm here to do better. I want to get
I
better.
know you have all the knowledge. You've attended all the workshops.
I just don't have, I haven't been able to fit it into my
I
routine.
know.
And I
I
saw
hear
someone
you.
else send a question about a routine and just like, is there, considering this scale, sort of a basic routine that could be adjusted, but
Yeah,
basics.
I hear you. Well, before we get into that, I do want to say a couple things. One is, Adam, thank you very much. I definitely need to get a hold of you for the Compost Collective because I have so many questions and I don't want to bore people, but just a couple questions that we don't need to discuss right now, but just I would love to like email about would be what comes to mind first is like for us is state and local city municipality restrictions and regulations, like being a nonprofit in this field for many, many years now, the Compost Collective has come up with tons and come against tons of that, like we started our journey. We were like we were the first residential service that was offered to the community. And we wanted to make our own compost here in town because we wanted to create an education site. And we want it to be close so schools could come and tour it. And we really wanted it to be something that was beautiful, just like a community garden, but a community garden with the emphasis of having a very beautiful composting site. And that was like, oh, no, you can't have that. You have to follow these zoning regulations. You have to follow all these rules. It can't be anywhere next to residents. It can't be this and that. So I'm so curious on how the USDA and the NRCS can help guide changes in zoning so that community composters can be in their community composting the food waste, because I am also involved in community composting on a nationwide scale. I travel to see community composters. I currently work with community composters in the state of California, where we're trying to, long story short, keep composting in communities instead of it going into big commercial and businesses. And luckily, the state of California has exemptions for small composters. But there, from what I understand and what I've been trying to work for for a long time in Missouri, is there is no exemptions for small composters. And Kansas City Compost Collective right now in Kansas City is having to fight extremely hard to keep their composting facility up and running. And they are an urban farm in the city that has been running a composting site very beautifully. I've toured their site, and all it does is take one complaint from someone, and now their business is threatened, even though they follow all the composting rules and have absolutely no smell. So if I could just request one thing from the USDA and NRCS is that help us find land, help us change zoning regulations so that we can be close to our community and we can offer this type of cultural change around composting close, instead of having to be pushed out to these outskirts because composting is so frowned upon. And I understand that, large facilities that process huge amounts of waste, I toured many of those, and I know why they have to be on outskirts. but community composters that stay in the technical community term, which is a certain amount of processing a certain amount of organic matter. We stay under that threshold. It'd be so wonderful to be able to see us get exemptions so that we can operate on land that is closer to our community, and also have help from the government doing that.
Mhm.
So I'd love to talk to you sometime about that
You
in
bet.
email, and see if you can help us, the Compost Collective, find that land, because man, we have been searching since 2018.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. We still hear a lot of fear and anxiety, even with our volunteers and gardeners, and maybe someone wants to, but they're afraid and they've heard bad things, or maybe they have gotten complaints from neighbors who just are scared of the piles and stuff. So it's
yeah.
it's really good. We're at least trying to help. There are so many great webinars just on our channel alone, but all over the web. Like there's so many resources now for people to do it properly and uh, get a lot of benefit out of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I love that the
thank you
government.
again. You've really helped build a library of great information.
Yeah, it is so incredible to see it blossom now. I mean, Anna, like when we first started, it was like very taboo. And just in the last like 5 years, man, composting has taken off. And I'm so happy that I got to be like in this process while it does it.
Good.
So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so I can show a couple things here. Let's see. Share screen. I'm going to do my entire screen because I'm going to be going back and forth through some slides here. So let's see. Hopefully, guys. Oh, it's going to make me go up there, isn't it? Well, let's see here. I see that it wants me to put it up
Do the whole,
here.
maybe share the whole window instead of the whole screen.
Okay, can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay, let's see here.
It's like in Canva. So
Yeah, I'm going to present it here. I live in kind of a rural area, so my internet is super slow, but let's see. Okay, how's that?
Beautiful.
All right, so I want to start off first with a little bit about myself so you all kind of have a little background. And if you've been on this series, Compost, in the last 2 years with us, you kind of know about me, obviously. So, but just in case you're new and you don't know about me, I'm Justine Campbell. That is my son in that picture there with me. Just this year I had another son, so now I have 2 boys. I attended Missouri State University for Sustainable Agriculture and Plant Science long ago. And now I manage a 3-acre, I guess you could say more along the lines of like a permaculture farm. We have orchards and market style farm side of farming. We do livestock and what else? We're all over the place on this farm, which is kind of fun, but can be a lot. So I've gotten a lot of experience doing that. I have been doing vegetable farming for market production for over 10 years now. I'm a master gardener in Greene County. I've been through trainings with Kiss the Ground. One of my ones that I'm really excited about and proud of is that I have done Dr. Elaine's Soil Food Web certification. I used to work for Springfield Community Gardens through a VISTA program, and I was their composting educator way back in the day and helped them start up a lot of their programs that they're implementing now, which I'm super grateful for. Currently, I'm the president and co-founder of the Compost Collective. And then I've done multiple certifications and been through lots of workshops, and I continue my education all the time. Soil and compost nerds kind of have to keep going with their education. That's what kind of drives us. Like this past weekend, I just did a 2-day microscopy workshop where I was getting back some of my microscope knowledge and analyzing compost from all over the region and working with another soil food web educator, and so it was really fun to do that for the weekend and get back into looking at soil and compost underneath the microscope again. And then a little bit about the Compost Collective. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We operate a food scraps pickup program for residents, for small businesses, and then one of the things we're best known for is our free community bins that are located throughout the city. We are really big on making sure that everyone has access to composting no matter your financial situation. But if you are in a situation where you can pay for the service, it does help us out drastically, being that we are a grassroots organization. Every little dollar counts. And then our businesses that sign on board are the heart of the organization as far as they keep us going. They help pay for the free community bins along with grants that we've gotten in the past, and they really help support us. So the more businesses that we can get on board, the better. We offer education workshops throughout the city, which like this one, and then we do zero waste events as well, where we'll go to events and help as best we can to make it as little waste as possible. We offer composting service and help educate on proper compostable wares and recycling as well. Okay, so let's get out of that. We're going to be switching back and forth quite a bit here. And I'm going to stop sharing and go to some, let's see, some questions. So first thing I want to go through is, so Anna asked the question that I definitely will get to as well. And I have them in order of how people have put them on. So I'm going to just kind of start from the top. And I think your question is in there too, very close to the top. So if you're watching this and you want your question answered that you put in, I will answer all the questions. So the first one was, how does municipal water, which is treated with chemicals, affect the microbiome in soil and compost? And that is a very good question, because if you live in the city and you have to make compost, this is going to affect your compost slightly. Now, everything with composting, the word that can always go after is it depends, because there are lots of different situations that you could come across. You could be a composter who's composting for very nice quality compost, right? Your end goal is to sell it and make money off of it. And also end goal is to be able to sell a product that is alive and full of tons of microorganisms. So using municipal water is going to be something that you're going to really want to look at and invest in techniques of how to make sure that the chlorine, the chemicals in there, aren't offsetting your microbial life. Now, if you are a home composter and you're composting just to make sure that your food waste doesn't go to the landfill, because you're trying to be as green and have really regenerative and mindful practices at your home, but you're not necessarily looking to have this product that you're like, oh, it's so full of life and it's perfect and it's going to provide, I can guarantee that my compost is this amount of nematodes and amoebas and blah, blah, blah. Then you wouldn't have to worry about the municipal water that much, because it's going to work for you. Because no matter what the microbial counts, they will be there. They may just be lower, which I'll discuss here in a second. Now, and then if you're on well water, then obviously ignore this. So the water that comes from the city, it is treated with chlorine and chemicals. And the best thing that I can advise for people to do at home, if you're in a home setting and you don't want that on your compost, is to put your water in a 5-gallon bucket, maybe 1 or 2, and let it sit out for 24 hours. And then what you're doing is, in those 24 hours, the chlorine will off gas. It is nice to stir it every once in a while, so keep that off gassing going and keep the water moving. But that's all you have to do, is keep it out in the open for 24 hours so it can off gas. You can also do rain collection. And if I remember right, it's been a few years, but I will have to get, maybe Anna can find it, but you can get reimbursed for rainwater collection in the city of Springfield. I don't have to find the organization that does that. I cannot remember.
Heard of that. I'll look and see how updated that is.
Yeah.
I've heard of
And even at that, like if you decide, another good reason to collect rainwater would be that so that you're putting it onto your compost pile. And then rainwater itself is full of tons of beneficial things for your soil and your compost. I mean, rainwater is in a form of nitrogen that your plants can easily take up versus other forms of nitrogen. So it's a great thing to have on hand.
I
Now,
found it. It's a James River Basin
oh, there you go. Yes.
partnership. I'll add that link to the chat. But yeah, that's
Springfield is so full. Yes, they have wonderful programs. It's such a great town and city to have all these wonderful programs so people can be able to do these magnificent things on their land. So now if you are a large facility, large meaning community composting style, like, I mean, you're not going to have super, super large facilities do this. Maybe they will, which would be amazing. Maybe they won't. You would want to invest in some sort of filtration system for your water to filter out the chlorine and other chemicals that could be harmful for the microbiome. So the person who's asking this question, I feel like they probably already have an understanding of composting because they use microbial life in soil and compost. So they know that it's alive, and chlorine and other chemicals in water are there to kill off certain pathogens and microbial life. So obviously that they are not going to be good for each other. But if you're making compost that's active and has a lot of life in it, and you're constantly feeding it nitrogen and you're keeping it going and turning happy and healthy, it will keep reproducing. So when you put the water on there and you kill off some of the microbiome, as long as you're supplying the basic needs for the compost pile, which we've gone over in many, many videos, carbon, nitrogen, water, oxygen, it will rebuild itself. And if you decide, you know what, I don't want to even have to deal with chemicals, get a filter or put the buckets out in the open. So that's for that question. I hope that answers the question. I hope that answers it well for you. So question number 2, what do you recommend for people who don't have time to turn a pile?
Sorry,
Again,
I was on mute when I was saying thank you for adding another resource to the resource bank, James River. And Adam, did you go off mute for a second too?
Yes, and I do apologize. I got to be leaving here shortly, but again, I just want to convey to everyone that again, this is a very important process and subject, especially to the Springfield area. And I think with what Justine has done with setting up the Compost Collective, it's been wonderful. I'm looking forward to, and Justine, I'll be getting with you here, probably next week, maybe. To talk, because we can see what we can do to help you guys out, as well as trying to look for future endeavors and future people to get involved in the Springfield Community Compost Collective, if that sounds good. Okay.
Thank you so much, Adam.
All right, thank you. All right,
Have fun
bye-bye.
watering your garden. Cool. All right, thank you, Justine.
Yeah, and anyone who is just now joining or coming on, please put your questions in the Q&A box so I can answer them for you. Right now, we're just going through questions that have been asked previously. I want to make sure we answer everyone's questions, so please let us know what you got. So the next question was, what was it? What do you recommend for people who don't have time to turn a pile? And my answer to that was, it depends. It really depends on what your goal is. Is your goal to just divert it from the landfill and not get a finished product? Is your goal to make something really nice for your farm or your garden? So we'll go over both of those. If your goal is to just make sure you keep it out of the landfill, then cold composting is what you probably want to do, which is just make sure every time you put it on your pile, you cover it with carbon and you give it a little water. And that's it. And you just keep doing that. Every time you put your compost on your pile, you cover it with carbon, because you want to make sure you're not vectoring any bugs or having any smells. And as long as that nitrogen is covered with carbon, you are going to be okay. Making sure that if you put a nice big 5-gallon bucket of food waste on there, you want to take a 5-gallon bucket of mulch or leaves and cover the whole thing. You want to see absolutely no food scraps or nitrogen material. Now, if you are like, I want to get a finished product because this is what I'm composting, then I would recommend what's called an ASP system, or an aerated static pile system. And what this is, and I'm going to pull up a little slide here while I do this. It is a system where we force air through a compost pile. So let's see here. I'm going to share my screen. Let's go here. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, it's popping up.
Perfect. So this right here is what we call an ASP system. And I will say that if you want to do this type of system, you need to have probably a larger amount of food scraps for this system to work well. So ASP is aerated static pile. So you're forcing air in or you're forcing air out of the pile. And you need PVC piping, you need a little house to store the blower, and normally use like blowers that they use for bouncy houses. And you need electricity, or if you do solar panels, you need something to power the little blower. And you need a timer, because it has to blow pretty consistently, like every 2 to 3 minutes, maybe every other day. You'll figure out the system as you go and check it. But you build your compost pile on top of this. You can make them small, like in a 4x4 system, or you can make them larger if you have larger food scraps like this, or and this is kind of what it looks like on a farm system. Like if you're a farmer, which I think this is a great system for farmers, because a lot of farmers will say they don't have time for composting. So when they have a very big harvest of scraps, like if they're turning over a tunnel or turning over a field, then they have a lot of nitrogen source. This would be a great way to compost that source in an effective and easy way for them. It's just a little bit of investment in the PVC piping and the blower and all the other in the house, and making sure you have that already. The biggest thing to remember with these is that you have to feel them out and feel what works for you and what works for your pile. So it takes a little bit of testing, and you have to be careful when you're around this, because if you have a tractor and you're going to dump material on top of this, you don't want to hit your PVC pipe, especially if you go to now get all the material off of it because it's finished. You want to make sure not to hit those pipes. The pipes need to completely be covered in mulch before you start putting organic matter on top of it, as you want to make sure to get really good air filtration throughout the whole pile. So if you just start stacking up on top of those, it doesn't get the best as if you do a nice thick, like 1 foot mulch layer on top. So it does need a lot of mulch and a lot of carbon material. But this way, you would only have to turn the pile maybe once or twice through its whole process. And because you're forcing air through this pile, you're making sure that it's not going anaerobic, and you're providing a lot of oxygen for the microbial life to reproduce faster. So you're going to get a finished product quickly in this manner. So if you're a farmer and you're looking for something to a composting system that will help you achieve good compost with less input and at a reasonable time, I would recommend aerated static piles. This is becoming very popular in the last 3 years. So there's tons of information out there on aerated static piles. Some people even make kits that you can buy. They can get expensive, so that's why I recommend kind of just building your own. And we could do a whole workshop on this style, but very effective
Yeah.
You can also incorporate this style into a 3-bin system, and that's what I'm getting ready to build in a couple weeks. Is I'm building a 3-bin wooden system. You do have to keep it enclosed if you do it this way, and then you can run the PVC pipes. You build them into the 3-bin system, and you run it across, and then I'm hopefully gonna like do a video footage of it all and everything of how to
Oh,
build
you
this, and then
should. That'd be
maybe
fun.
I could share it with you guys, and you can see how we achieved an area excited pile in a 3-bin system, which are just, the bins are 4x4x4, and there's 3 of them. And that's something to do for smaller farms and urban areas. So you can say my compost is not exposed to the outside elements. If you have absolutely no vector issues, and you're gonna hopefully get a good product because you're constantly forcing air through it.
Yeah.
Um,
Two
so
quick
yeah.
questions. Did you say with the ASP system that you have to lay mulch at the bottom, or were you talking about over the top? You said a thick layer of mulch
Over the pipes. You want to make sure all the piping is
over the
covered.
pipes. Okay.
Yeah. All the piping is covered with a nice thick layer.
Okay. About layer. I'm taking notes over the
Yeah,
piping.
that's great.
And then so if someone's goal were really just diverting from a landfill, like the first option, the cold composting solution, like would that product be usable at all? Like, should someone not put that on their garden? Or, I mean, I guess if you're not turning it, it would stay really chunky. It would, I don't know.
It takes a while. So
You just
growing up, my mom did cold composting, and cold composting style could take a year to like 2 or 3 years to get a finished product. It takes a very long time.
Okay.
Because I mean, if you can get out there and turn it whenever you can and make sure, but it only, if it's absolutely hands off, then it's only getting water when it rains. And at that rate, it sometimes will never even get water in the center, which we'll go over that here in a second. But it just takes a lot longer because sometimes they can go anaerobic. And when anaerobic bacteria comes in, they slow down the decomposition process. They still decompose organic material, but it's just at a much slower rate. And sometimes it can be very smelly when they do that because they off gas methane and foul smells, vinegar smells and such. Those are anaerobic bacteria doing that. They do say sometimes, and let's see if I can find my slide here that says that cold composting can have its benefits. They say cold composting sometimes has been shown to not off gas as much nitrogen. If you are doing hot composting, sometimes it can be where can you see these little, are they pretty little? Do I need to make them bigger?
It really, I think it's fine.
Okay. Because then I can go through the slides and be able to answer questions. So like hot composting faster, the temperature, we're reaching temperatures that kill weeds and kill pathogens. This is a more proper way to compost things if you're going to use animal products like bones and manure and such. But like I said, it is hands-on and labor intensive. It can be hot, like the ASP system is still hot composting. You're still reaching the temperatures that you need to. And then cold composting is like less labor intensive. You're not turning as much. You kind of put it in the back of your yard. Like I said, longer, but it can conserve nitrogen. It most likely will not kill pathogens and weed seeds because the high temperature is what guarantees those. A lot of times when people say, I have a squash growing out of my compost pile, that's because it's cold and those seeds didn't get to the core where they were killed off by the 135 to 160 degree temperatures. And then nutrient loss through extended exposure. And what they mean is like if it sits back there for a long time and it keeps raining on it over and over and over again, and you're not feeding it, then you can have a lot of microbial and nitrogen loss through that, what's called leachate. And it just kind of goes into the ground. And the things that are around your compost pile are going to be extremely happy because they're benefiting from that. Like the very first time I ever made a compost pile when I was younger, I lost almost all the compost pile to the ground because I was making it in an area that had lots of trees and it was like right next to my garden, and that ground needed it so bad that I was like sucking it all in, and like I just watched it like decompose and then nothing. It was really incredible. So that's another reason why we put lots of mulch and cardboard at the base of it, so we don't lose all that material to the ground, because it rains and stuff, it will spread out and the ground will soak it in. So recommend food you do not have time to turn pile. And then there's always, which, I think I have this on another answer. If you really know you can't do it, then there's services for you, right? The Compost Collective can come pick it up for you. You could take it to the city and they can process your yard waste for you. So that's always something to think about as well. If you don't want to take the time to do it, it's not bad if you just take it somewhere where other people can composting it. You're still doing good, like at least by taking it and turning it into compost through somebody else. Okay, so let's see, next question.
Are there any plant diseases that wouldn't be killed by reaching the proper temp in a pile?
This was a great question, because I do in my microscopy course this weekend. That's something that we talk about a lot. And in the past, people would say, yes, right? There's always some possibility of something going through. But what I have written down here is also it depends on the soil life that is happening within the pile. So in general, I'll say that small amounts of herbicides and pesticides and pathogens, the compost process, if you're reaching 135 to 165 for 10 to 15 days, it will kill those pathogens and those seeds. Now, remember, when you're building your 4x4 pile, the center of your pile is where it's the hottest. So this is why proper turning when you're doing a hot thermal compost is so important, is because after that center pile has reached 135 to 165 for 10 days, well, 5 to 10 days, right? Mostly it's 5 days, because you'll start to see a drop. You will turn the pile. So you'll take the inside, put it to the outside, and then take the outside and you flip it inside out. And now your pile is going to warm up again, because it has all this new material. The microbes come back into the center to keep nice and cozy and protected from the outside elements. And they're going to heat that up again to 135. And you want to continue this process a few times, so that you make sure you get all of your pile. And that's how you make sure that you kill off all the pathogens in your compost pile. Now, if you can't guarantee this turning and this making sure that you're getting these temperatures, then when you go to compost weeds or plants that have certain type of pathogens or disease, there is a chance that you could have a compost system that may have those spores in the compost. So when you put it onto your plants, the spores and the seeds may be there. Now, this is the part that I say it depends. If you believe, which I hope you do, in the soil food web, and that it all depends on having a balanced system in the soil. If you throw in a plant pathogen or a certain type of fungal spore or strand into your soil and with the compost, it should not matter, because your soil food web in your compost and in your soil is so balanced that when a pathogen gets introduced, the soil food web actually takes care of it itself. It's the exact same way as in your body. If you are feeding your body very healthy fruits and vegetables, and you're taking care of it, and you're feeling very good, and you may have a small amount you may be exposed to a kid that has a cold, right? And so your body now can showcase, all right, Am I going to get taken down by this cold? Or am I going to have maybe a sore throat for 2 days and I'm going to bounce back really easily, right? So same system, in the same way with plants and in the soil. Plants can be affected by these pathogen disease, but they communicate, like we talked about in our last workshop, they communicate with the microbial life in the soil to say, I'm under attack by this pathogen. I need this right now. And the microbial life helps them to reestablish themselves and to give them extra nutrients and to give them the minerals that they need to fight off these plant diseases so they don't win. There's a beautiful example I had in a lecture a long time ago, I don't have it with me, where it showed a root feeding nematode, which are very, very rare, and there's not a lot of them, even though it gives nematodes a bad rap. There's more beneficial nematodes than there are root feeding nematodes. But there's a root feeding nematode, and it's right next to a tomato plant. And what you see is a fungal hyphae that has lassoed itself around this root-feeding nematode, and it's killing it. And that is the balance of microbial life. There is, for every bad guy in the soil, there should be way more good guys that come in and make sure that they don't reproduce and spread. Now, if you start seeing tons of plant disease in your soil over and over and over again, then you have an imbalanced soil food web, and you need to make compost that has tons of microbial life to go onto the soil so that you can help the plant itself fight it off. Now, if you introduce pesticides and herbicides, then you're going to completely disrupt that network of communication for the plant. And now your plant will forever be solely reliant on those pesticides and herbicides until you rebuild the system in the soil again. You can always bring back soil, even if it's clay and full of things, you can always bring it back with compost. Because microbial life, as long as you keep feeding it, and the ways to feed it is through roots in the ground and organic matter on top, the microbial life will keep reproducing, just like it does in compost piles. So, long story short here, that was a lot for plant disease.
Beautiful. For every bad guy in the soil, there should be many more good guys.
Guys, yes.
That's very sweet. I imagine like someone making a cartoon of like the bad microbe trying to get in there or something. I don't know.
Yes, there are. I mean, there's incredible images, underneath the microscope of watching this happen, like watching the bad guys being taken down by these microbial, life that's saying you can't be here. So yeah, it's pretty incredible. And then also, we're just now finding out too that small amounts of glyphosate and different, like small amounts of because manure can have dewormers and antibiotics in it, which is pretty bad for microbial life, right? That's like those kill microbial life. That's what they're made to do. We're seeing that with new studies now that the composting process actually can get them out of the soil and kill it off to where you're not continuing to spread, but it has to be done the proper way. Like you have to get those composts at that certain temp for a duration of time in order to do that. So that's why it's also very important where you get your compost from. And that's a question on here too. So we'll keep going. Okay.
Wait, follow-up question. I just hope that inspires people to not use glyphosate. And I Googled what to do. Like, so what if we just converted someone and they have it in their shed? What do you do with it? You don't want to just throw it away and send it to the landfill. Like, you don't want that anywhere. Missouri does have a pesticide collection program. Is it an herbicide or a pesticide?
What? The chemical, the pesticide. Yeah.
It is.
Well, I'm sorry. It's a herbicide. Yeah, it kills plants. It's a herbicide. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I feel like it probably kills everything, but yeah, it's directed
Oh yeah.
at.
It kills, I mean, it kills everything. It kills weeds. It kills it's encompassing all of it. It was the the miracle worker.
It was just the go-to thing. I keep sharing this story because I think it's a good way of helping people see big picture what that's doing to the ground. I was out visiting a farm and they had some fence line and total erosion around this fence line, just like such dry dirt, no weeds, no grass, no nothing. And they're going to be needing to replace the fence because it's there are no roots, there's nothing keeping the fence in place. Like they've completely, unfortunately, killed all life around the fence line, and that includes the roots and everything that keeps our soil in place. So just another kind of visible example of it doesn't pick and choose, it kills everything, and it doesn't preserve our soil at all. So I'll find a better answer then of like, how can you dispose of glyphosate and see what programs are out there. I'll keep looking.
Okay, awesome. So the next question, number 4, and that was I was looking for this one, was I would take a garden tour and ask Brentwood how they do. Oh, wait, no. So that's my answer. The first thing that comes to mind for a composting workshop is how to build it into a sustainable routine. We only have one garden that regularly manages your compost pile, which is Brentwood. The rest, forget about it until it's long overdue for turning. So, how to incorporate maintenance into small, sustainable weekly steps. And then the main question, what does a good compost schedule look like? How often should I be checking it? What time of day? How can I get it organized? Blah, blah. One of the things that I would love to point out here is that Brentwood, I remember a long time ago when I first was working for the community gardens and I was teaching these composting workshops to the garden leaders, and I'll never forget Brentwood. I don't know if she's still there. What's her name? Susan. I don't know if she's still the garden leader.
She is.
Yay! She was incredible. She just, I remember teaching her and she was really engaged in the workshop. And then afterwards, I went out to her community garden site and we built a pile together and she checked on it. And the first time she took this temperature gauge right here and she put it in her pile after we built it. And she saw that it went into the active stage of 135 to 140. She sent me a picture and said, it's like, she was so excited. It's working. She did it. She created hot compost. And in my mind, I was like, everyone believes they can't do it, that it's so hard to do. But when they first create the pile and they see that it goes up with the simple task of adding carbon and nitrogen and water and oxygen and layering it up, it takes that fear away of I can't do something to I just did it. And it wasn't that hard. And so the biggest thing I could say to people that how do we get our sites doing this? How do I get it at home? Is that you just have to go out and you have to try it and you have to see the results. Because if you save up, specifically in a community garden setting, if you have a big day where you're pulling all these weeds at the end of the season and you save them up with a little bit of food scraps and you build your pile and you make sure that you layer it in right and you add water, 50% moisture content because microbes need water, and you go back there in 2 days, I promise you will see a temperature increase. And that feeling right there will excite you to continue going, and you'll watch it go up and you watch it go up. And then when it starts going down, you'll be, okay, I need to turn it. And you'll turn it. And then you watch it go back up again. And then when it starts going down, you turn it again. And so it's really what it is it's the importance of getting the word out on how a compost pile should properly be made. And once you learn about how it should properly be made, and then you learn about why it should be made this way, because you're growing microorganisms that are doing the decomposition, and they're the ones who require this recipe that you're making, they're the ones that warm up the pile, then you'll have a better understanding of why things have to be a certain way. It's the same exact way when you're baking a cake. Like you have to add in certain things at a certain amount to get your finished product, the cake. So very similar to composting. And the reason I say why Brentwood does so well is because Susan was so engaged in the workshops. She learned so much. She followed up. We went out there and did hands-on experience. She took the chance and she built the pile and she saw the temperature change. And then at the end, she got to have a finished product that was going to be way better than anything she could buy in that area because it was using her native microorganisms and she could guarantee what was going in it. And it was right there on her land. She didn't have to drive to get it or pay money for it. And that experience right there is a fuel to keep people going. Now, also, it's remembering that in order to be, in my opinion, in my experience, I wouldn't consider myself a good gardener or farmer if I did not first start with composting and caring for my waste that I have. Because every gardening farm is going to have waste. You don't have to be a person that composts it. If you can financially afford to haul it off and have a community composter do it for you, then by all means do that. Because like if it's too hard for you to compost it on site and you know you're not going to be able to have the time for it, give it to somebody who can do that for you. And if you can afford to buy lots and lots of compost every year, it's in your budget, then do that. But if you need to compost it on your site, then build it into your schedule, just like you build it in of today we're doing seeding. Today we're cleaning the garden. Today we're going to lay irrigation. Today we're doing soil blocking. Every time I go out to my farm and garden, the first thing I do is I check on my compost pile. That's it. Like there, nothing comes before that. And in this new world of regenerative practices and the farmland and the garden land and at home, we may have to shift our mind a little bit on what comes first in certain things. So if when we walk up to there are times when I too am guilty of it. I have two little ones that I'm gonna get distracted with, and I go straight to the garden and bypass my compost pile, and I'm off to, whatever they let me do, and I totally forget my compost pile. It's gotten such a habit now that it's kind of nagging, and I'm like, no, next day I gotta go out there and check on it. So you just really have to build it into a routine and a habit. And once you build that habit into the fact that the compost is something of value and something that is a part of my garden instead of being so distant, it will change and you will get better and better about it. As far as what good compost scheduling looks like I said, as often as you can. If you can get over there every day, just to say you looked at it, right? Or just take a pitchfork and you poked it a little bit and you lifted it up, and you smelled it. That's great. I can share, I think the Community Gardens probably has it and you can find one online, but I can also share a document that you have, say, on your clipboard for your community gardens. And it has these questions of what pile is this? Is it pile 1, 2, or 3? And then you go to that pile, right? And it says, what's the date? And then you go over it and then, okay, was it turned today? Did you look at it? What did you notice? What's the moisture content? Like what stage is it in? And so you can have a sheet they make, like I said, they make lots of them today where you can put it at your community garden. And every day when people get to the garden, it's on their clipboard and they go to the pile and they run through the things that they're looking for. So you can provide the information for them. Like when they go to their pile, they should check its temperature. If it's made, like if it's been processed, they should kind of lift it up to make sure the moisture content is there, which is 50% wrung out sponge. They want to make sure that it's still covered with carbon, and they want to check it and check the smell, right? And from there, if you find out that, oh, I need to turn my pile today because my temperature is gone, or it's smelly, or it's not wet, you need to open it up, inspect it, turn it, fix it, put it back together again. And then go on with your other projects. And then volunteer days. Oh my gosh. Every time you have a volunteer day in a community garden, get all your volunteers in the compost pile. That is how you begin to change the community right there. Is when you go and turn a compost pile together with your fellow volunteers in the community, that is where the rewiring happens with your community. That is how you change
bonding.
for
Yes.
yes, for regeneration. I have seen so many kids and young adults and old adults, when I get them in the pile and we turn it together, it literally blows their mind to see this organic material, food scraps, like tomatoes, whatever, like vines, all of it, slowly turn into soil, because they're going to see that process. It changes them. So really have your volunteer days on your community garden be in the compost pile as much as you can, and use them to help turn it. So I hope that kind of helped. As far as like, day and time, that's something that has to feel good to you. And like I said, if you can, if you every day, if you don't go out there every day and you go out there once a week, just make sure that one time that you're going out there, you look at it. Because a compost pile should, no matter what, be looked at least once a week, once or twice a week. Okay.
Okay.
Let me
And
see
hey,
what.
just to follow up on the how to dispose of uh, herbicides, pesticides, it looks like in Springfield, City of Springfield Environmental Services, they do accept that in their
Oh,
household chemical collection. So that is
nice.
included.
Wonderful. Okay, let's see. Now let's go. Ideas for dealing with large quantities of yard and other waste where there is little time for chopping and proper turning the pile. How can we keep a good compost pile going without it becoming just a huge yard waste site? I kind of
Well,
answered this
first of
already.
all, wait, can I interject and say that I'm
Yeah.
getting a feeling that people consider this a little bit of a chore. And
Yes.
like, I remember in high school, my choir teacher was having a moment and he's said, you guys, you make time for the things you want to do. There's
Mhm.
always time, and you have to decide how you're going to spend the time. So back to your
Yeah.
point, it's like embrace it as a part of your daily routine and how you're connecting to the land and nature and your garden, or if it's really out of your capacity right now, then I don't know, hire one of the services or work together with a team of neighbors, maybe put
Mhm.
your own little composting time on the calendar or something. I don't know. But
Yeah.
make time for the things that you want to do. And there's no
Yes.
getting around that.
Yes. You're exactly right. I mean, you answered it right there. In this situation, it's also it starts with another thing of like, it depends. If you financially can afford to have it hauled off through, if you have a big truck and a trailer and you can haul off the yard waste or large quantities of garden waste, then by all means do that. You guys have a great facility that can take that. Um, there's the ASP system where you just pile it on the ASP system with carbon and nitrogen and water, and you still have to build the pile, but you only got to do it like once, and then you build it up to 4 to 6 feet tall, and you put the air through it and turn it once or twice, and then you have compost, but that's an investment. And then also looking at it like, if you grow the product and you work really hard to grow it, right? And say, like, I use tomatoes because even tomatoes in my farm are hard because they come with a lot of organic waste when they're done. But I worked so hard to grow that organic waste that for me, it's like, I don't want to just get rid of that. I don't see that as a waste. I want to take that product that I worked really hard to grow and then put it through a compost system so that it continues its value in my farm. If I ship it off, I'm losing that value of that product now. But that's a mindset shift on the farm, right? You have to see that there is value in your green waste instead of it being just another type of waste that you want to get rid of. And then, yeah, chopping it up. I mean, I'm currently working on ways, different types of machinery to either build or invest in that help me chop up my green waste because it is hard. It's super hard. I use machetes. to chop up a lot of stuff. I try to get volunteers to come out here on those days and do an exchange of helping me clean the season's mess up in exchange for like a CSA box, or two. I try to do whatever I can to get people to help me during that season that it's needed. Okay, so let's keep going here because we've got some to get through. So the next ones are basic supplies needed, tips for temperature gauges. Basic supplies needed for composting is carbon, your green material, your nitrogen, carbon, your brown material, brown, anything that is dead, basically dead to like the eye, but it still has value in the composting system. Nitrogen, which is your green material, your material that's still alive, and then water and oxygen. And then if you want a holding area for your compost pile, because maybe you're in the city or you're in an urban farm or you're on the farm and you just want it to look nice, you need to create some sort of holding area. And the smallest I would recommend your pile being is 4x4x4. If you look it up online, it can sustain itself at 3x3x3, but like a pallet system, all pallets are going to be around 4x4x4. So that's another reason why I like to just have that number and then give yourself an extra foot. It's a good size for a compost pile, and we can go over why that size is so important. And then a pitchfork. Pitchforks work really well in composting. It's much easier than a shovel. Possibly a sifter. If you want to sift your finished product, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can. And then a temperature gauge. And there's different types. Like the one I was showing you earlier here is a Rio Temp. I don't know if you can even see that on there. I can pull up a little image. I've gone through them in my other workshops too, but Rio Temp has a garden backyard pro. It's what I would get. It has a thicker stem right here. This is good for backyard composters. They come in Fahrenheit or Celsius, so make sure you get the one that you want when you check out. You can get them on Amazon anywhere from like $25 to $55, depending on the length you want. These are really good. I've had these forever in tons of compost piles, and they've never broke or anything like that. And then they tell you where the pile is steady, active, or hot. They have like a little gauge on here. See, green to gray. This is going to be like your best friend in composting because it's so fun to go check and see if your pile's hot or not. And it also tells you when you need to turn. If your pile goes over 165 degrees, you need to turn it. If you're getting up to 175, you start creating gases and alcohols that are not good for the compost pile. And so you want to make sure to turn it. And when you turn it, it actually cools it off to make sure that you don't do that. Another one here is, and now if you want on a big farm and you want to invest, you can go with this big guy here. I have this gauge, this protector on the outside. This is separate from this right here. These you can calibrate, and they have a much bigger face. The calibration's on the back here with a little screwdriver. So you put it in like boiling water and ice water, and then you calibrate it for that. This guard is really nice if you have big piles, easier to pull it in and out. I made this, my husband made this. We worked at, this is just a PVC pipe right here. Ooh, to protect it, because when you get it, you're just going to have it like this, and it has a very, very sharp end right here. And you want to be careful not to like damage it in your tool shed or, have any little kid or anybody that actually hurt themselves. So you want to make a sleeve for it. This one runs, I think, $135. If you go on Rio Temp's website, there's tons of different ones, depending on what you want. But this one specifically, I think it's $135. So if you're looking to do large amount of composting in bigger piles, I would invest in this one. It works really well. I haven't had any issue with Rio Temp or any of their products. So yeah, composting, basic things. So, and now if you want to be fancy and you want to get like a compost turner, then you have to, invest in the compost turner. But Other than that, very simple. Now let's see. Will you discuss the cost of buying compost versus making your own? Yes. Let me go let's see. What number was that? Number 7, back to mine. This has a lot of things too. I'm guessing whoever asked this question owns a farm, because the difference is not necessarily going to be worth it through costs if you're just a backyard gardener, because everything okay?
Yeah, sorry, it cut out for a second, but I see you now. It was just a second.
Okay. This the cost of buying compost versus making wouldn't really apply for the financial piece wouldn't be there for if you're a backyard composter, because if you're a backyard composter and you're wanting to make compost for your garden and it's a small amount, like 1 cubic yard of compost where you guys are is going to be anywhere from like 35 to like maybe at the highest end 75. If you buy like really fancy compost and you can find that where you are. What the biggest thing for you would be is if you make it in your backyard, then you know that you have good microbial count because you watched it and you made sure that it got to those temperatures. You know what went into it. You know how long it's been sitting there. You know that you know when it should be finished. Now, if you go and you purchase it from someplace, you would have to ask those questions, like what were your feedstocks? What materials did you have in there? What is your filtration system like? Like, do you have a large amount of plastic? Sometimes facilities can have issues with large amounts of plastic, sometimes even glass. What is can I please see a copy of your compost test? Because every facility has to have their compost tested, and you can look at the nitrogen count. And they don't test for microorganisms, unfortunately. I wish they did, but they'll test for heavy metals, and they'll give you what the nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium and such content in it. So it depends. Now, in my case, as a farmer, and if you are a farmer and you ask this question, it 100% is better if you make it. And now I'll break it down why. You only have to spend, let's see, depending on the season, 2 to maybe 8. But eight is like insanely high. 8's like if you run a food scraps facility and and your solo job is just to like turn it and check it. But so 2 to 8, right, hours a week at looking at your compost pile. And say in Springfield you pay, I don't know, $15 an hour, $20 an hour, right? That number right there is going to be 100% worth paying someone to do that over like a month span. Okay, we'll say 2-month span. Over you purchasing 10 yards of compost. Say like, because 10 to 20 yards of decent compost could be anywhere from $45 to $65 in your region, maybe even more. Now, $60 times 10, right? You're looking at $600. You could pay someone less than that to make you the amount that you need. And you can guarantee that it doesn't have any residual herbicides or pesticides, because that's been a huge issue lately, is that these large facilities, they get feedstocks from all over, and it can be anything, right? Because they're accepting their whole purpose is to keep from going to a landfill. So they're accepting everything to make compost. And if it happens to not be turned correctly, or if one little section happens to not get hot enough in their large facility, then there's possibility that now they're going to be distributing compost that has like herbicides or pesticides residuals in it, and it could kill off your plants. So example is, I had this problem when I first moved to this farm. I spent thousands of dollars on compost. Came to myself. I looked at the composting results. I talked to them on the phone. They emailed it to me. They guaranteed me this, this, and this. This place was far away, so I couldn't pay. I didn't have time to go see it. I had it trucked in. It got to me. It was full of plastics. It even had glass in it. And then when I went to go put it down on my garden, within a month, I saw that it was not composted correctly, and it completely devastated a large amount of my crops. Another reason to compost on your farm is that you can avoid this yourself with proper technique and just knowing if you have a large crop that has a lot of disease in it, then you say, okay, I'm not going to put that in my pile. I'm going to burn it instead. And because I don't want to risk it, so just right there alone for me now is worth it. But if you have a farm where you factor in large thousands of dollars every year to purchase compost, then you don't need to make your own. You can pay to have it hauled off so that a processor can use it, and then pay to have your compost come in. But I know right now a lot of farms who never used to compost are now turning to composting on their site because it's just worth it for them. The result that they see is so much better. I mean, besides saving money on composting, they're now eliminating the use of heavy fertilizers. They don't have that expense anymore. They're seeing a huge change in their soil. They don't have to use as much mulch because compost can be also used as a mulch for when in the off season. It helps in a lot of other ways than just paying for compost. So, yes. So on my end, if you're a farmer, it's always going to be worth making your own versus buying it. So that was a long answer for that. Let's continue.
That's very good. Very good.
What are the quality differences between making and buying? I totally just went over that one. So we don't need to do that. What if my pile isn't getting hot? There is on the YouTube channel for the community gardens. We have gone over I think we had a whole workshop almost dedicated to
On troubleshooting.
Yeah, troubleshooting the pile. We did. So watch that one. But if it's not getting hot, it's either you don't have enough nitrogen, you don't have enough water, or your pile is too small. So you want to open it up and you want to see what's going on, and you want to fix one of them at a time, so that if you do all three of them at a time, then you're never going to know which one was actually the issue. So from a sciencey point of view, and just for you to gain the knowledge of proper composting, fix one issue, do it, come back in a couple days and see if it worked. If it didn't work, go to the next issue. Go to adding water. If that didn't work, come back, make it bigger. If that works, great. You knew that it was too small. So go through those steps to figure out what's going on. How long does it take for compost to be made? It depends. If you do thermal composting and you have the correct ratios and you build it to the correct height and you turn it at least twice a week for 4 to 8 weeks, you're going to have a beautiful compost in 6 to 8 weeks, which is no time, right? To have a finished product that's literally going to grow soil and feed your plants and make beautiful product. Piles built and maintained. So that's what I said. Okay, so
and I think we skipped the one before that.
Which one was it? Oh, can I compost manure? Yes, thank you. Yes and no. It depends on the animal and the way you want to compost. Yes to thermal composting. No to, let's see, everyone's different. On a farm and you're using it for heavy plant material, like market garden style, I would say no to horses. I've seen a lot of friends that does horse. Yeah, I had a lot of friends that use horse stuff, and it's just because they're treated with a lot of chemicals. Those poor horses, they get a lot of antibacterial, antimicrobial, and dewormers. I mean, think of it this way. Anything that gets a dewormer, what it's doing is it's killing off the nematodes in their body. And you're trying to grow beneficial nematodes in your compost because nematodes recycle the nutrients in the soil. They take bacteria, eat it, put it out the other end in a plant available form that the plant can take up. Nematodes are very, very important to the recycling system and the soil food web system. So if you put a bunch of dewormer on the soil, you're going to kill off your nematodes. So you won't get that nutrient cycling.
Yeah.
And then also some animal manures, you gotta be careful because the seeds, like, let's see, sheep, like their poop still has the seeds in it. Like, so if you can't compost that, if you don't get that manure super, super hot, you're going to be spreading a lot of seeds all over your garden. And you need to be careful. People need to be careful when they add manure to their garden too, just straight, because you could also be spreading a lot of seeds, let alone pathogens. But that's something. Someone told me a long time ago that the only animal that successfully kills off seeds is a llama. I don't know if that's true. I have to test the llama poop. You know, I guess llama poop supposedly their stomach like fully digests the seeds. I'm not sure.
Interesting.
But
And
yeah,
I think, yeah, since it got brought up, I believe it's 120-day buffer time. Like
yes,
if we're amending
yes.
their beds with straight manure, they recommend doing that kind of in fall on the beds that you won't be planting in for some months. So you
Yeah.
get a full 120 days from the point of application.
Yeah.
Just
And even at that, I will always tell people it's way better if you compost it first.
yeah.
Because you put it into a form that the microbes can easily take in, and it's just it gets to your plants and everything faster. Like in my experience, I had a lot better success on composting it and then putting it on versus just putting it on straight. Okay, let's see. What's the next one here?
How do I know if my pile is ready to be shifted to the next bin?
So that depends on the temperature. If your temperature has reached 135 or over for 5 days, then it's time to turn it, you know. And then if you see that it starts to go down in temperature, or so maybe it went up and it only was at that temperature for a couple of days and then it started to go down, now it's time to turn it over so that you mix it all up and it can go back up again. Here we do have a pile that for backyard composters, say it takes you like a couple weeks, if not longer, to actually get your compost pile all the way built up to 3 feet or 4 feet. Well, once you finally get your compost pile built up to that 3 or 4 feet, take it and turn it over to the middle, to your next pile, and let it sit there and do its wonderful process. So then you can start all over in your first bin to building it up slowly. Because that's something I get all the time. It's like, well, I only compost small amounts, you know, like maybe a little bit here and there and there and there. Well, just do that then. Just compost small amounts, and when you get to that 3 or 4 feet height, then flip it over and let it do its thing, because it will still be getting up to temperature here and there. Just know that way you can't guarantee that you're killing off like, you know, pathogens or anything. But you're still going to make really good compost. So, I mean, I just looked at a compost pile underneath a microscope where that's what they did. They just did it slowly over time. It had the most life in it. I saw like all sorts of microbial activity. It looked amazing. It did have a lot of spores of like different types of fungal things that I don't know what they are in the spore form, but it had an incredible amount of microbial life. It was beautiful. So that's what you would do. And also, if you can handle it and you don't live in an urban area, you can always make what we call like a slushy form, where you collect your food scraps for like a couple weeks in like buckets. And when you get enough, then you go and you probably want to wear a mask. I mean, I'm used to it now, and then you go and you build your pile, because even though you have nitrogen that's in this slushy form, when you go to build your pile and you expose it to the air, you're going to kill off all the anaerobic bacteria. Because remember, anaerobic bacteria can only survive in an anaerobic setting. So as soon as you open them up to oxygen, and the aerobic bacteria, the good guys, are going to now come in and start decomposing the material. So you can always turn things around with the right elements added. Okay, next question.
Do you like the composting turners? How do those work? Do those work? Is that
hit and miss? You got to use them every day, and you have to turn it every day. You cannot let it sit in there because they don't have, especially in Missouri where it's very humid and hot. You can't let it sit in there for a long period of time because it won't decompose anything, because there's not enough air circulation in there. And by turning it, you're hopefully incorporating air in there. I will say that unless they've developed one that can actually hold a cubic yard, that where it's not like super hard to turn it when it's a cubic yard, it can be a little difficult to do it. And it could have a hard time decomposing because it's in a setting that it's like kind of, the carbon and nitrogen is kind of touching, kind of not on all ends, depending on if you turn it, if you have enough carbon material in there. It's kind of iffy. In the terms of not sending your waste to the landfill, and it being, say you're older and this is easier for you, it's great. Just make sure you put a lot of leaves and you put a lot of mulch in there, and you get out there and it's part of your daily routine to turn it. And you make sure that it doesn't get too wet. If it gets too wet in there, it's going to be stinky and go anaerobic. So just know when you're looking, when it goes anaerobic. If it's stinky, we don't want that. So it's back and forth on those. I think it depends on the situation. Now, if you're capable of turning the pile, and you want to have a hands-on experience with your family, which I love. Like my son, he's like a little composting garden expert now. That dude can go out there and harvest and turn piles and do all sorts of stuff. And he's only 4 years old. And that's because from day one, I had him in a compost pile. But it's fun to like have that with your family. So, okay, next one. Do you ever inoculate your piles to increase certain nutrients? I do. I take my finished products or like leftovers. Like if I sift out my finished product and I have a bunch of mulch leftovers from it, I'll take that mulch and I'll throw it into my active pile, because that mulch right there has tons of microbial activity on it, and that will help to inoculate my new pile. People will also go to like a local, like the forest near them, and they'll grab like saprophilic fungi, which is the fungi that you can see on the surface that has the white strands. That's saprophilic fungi. They break down carbon materials into soil. And so you'll see them and you can collect them and throw them in your pile. If the native, as long as your compost pile is sitting on the ground, you're going to have native microorganisms that are going to get into it. Now, if your pile is sitting up off the ground, you're going to have microorganisms that are more like flying in the air, getting on it, or microorganisms that came from the food scraps that you're getting on it. I mean, it's always going to be getting inoculated because they're all over us. But if you're looking to have like really local stuff and kind of jumpstart the system a little bit faster, yeah, use some of your finished product or go to the forest and grab some forest leaves and throw it in there. Let's see.
And I've crossed through, I think we can skip a couple of these because they've already been covered.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
So can we skip to the grass question? Let's say the grass has taken over someone's pile. What should they do?
That is a great question because I know that can happen in Springfield. So I'm gonna imagine because I have dealt with that in a pile when I was working for the community gardens, because Bermuda grass, has these crazy rhizomes, and they'll just like crawl up. They're attracted to compost piles. It's what's going to happen. They seek it out, So this is your options, and they're kind of wild. You can dig out all your finished product. Like you can like try to like I had it situation where it's just like insane. It looked like a grass hill. Like you couldn't even tell it was compost pile anymore. So we kind of lifted it up. We dug out any of the finished product that we could find that was usable. And then basically we said, all right, we've lost this area to the grass. So we're going to come over here and we're going to build another little composting system over here. And we're going to rebuild the whole thing. And this time we're going to put tons of cardboard on the ground all around it with like a 2 to 3 feet perimeter of it, so we can keep an eye on it and not let it go over that cardboard. We cover the cardboard with mulch, and tons of mulch, because it's easier to pull Bermuda out of mulch. And then we start over, because that's versus trying to pull it all out of your compost pile. It can be a little tedious and uncomfortable. But if
So
it
like,
is just,
you mean you take a shovel and just like get the layer of grass? Like, how do you dig out the finished product? Just make a hole and dig
it
it
is
out?
just, well, it depends on the grass. Like if it's Bermuda spreads in these rhizomes that kind of make this like little carpet. And so you can sometimes take it and kind of lift it up, and you'll see there'll be like a nice pile of finished product underneath it because they haven't penetrated it deeply. So I would harvest whatever that is. But if you have another grass, if you say you have a huge pile of Johnson grass and the roots are just absolutely huge and they're taking over that pile, then sometimes it's just great. You just say, okay, I have a new mound over here of grass, and now I need to let that be for a while, because eventually that mound will go down, and we come over here now and we start one over here, and we don't let that happen again. And then also be careful what you put in there. If you put grass, if the grass came from inside the compost pile, then you didn't get the temperature, and you need to turn it. And like I said last time, if you can't keep it hot, then don't put the grasses in there to begin with. Put them out on a tarp and let them dry out in the sun, and like really dry out to where they're like little crispy carbon materials. You got to make sure they're very, very dry. And then put them in your pile as a carbon source and compost them that way. Okay.
That
Next
actually
question.
covers like 2 questions someone else had. So
Nice. Oh, what's minimum? Oh, let's see. Is there any green material I shouldn't add to my Bermuda? Let's see. Oh, is there a minimum amount of materials need to get into a compost system going? No, yeah, right. No, you can start at anything. What is the biggest mistake you see people making with their compost? The biggest mistake I would see people making with their compost pile is that they put it in a place where it's very hard to access. If they're home system first. They put it in the back of their yard, and it's very hard to access, and it's basically like out there, and they forget it. Instead of it being up front, like, what's crazy is that we keep our trash cans closer to our house than we keep our compost piles, which is just so crazy, because trash cans are nasty, right? Like every trash can is nasty unless you pay for the service to clean your trash can, which I know that is the thing now. You can have the service that comes clean your trash can.
wow.
So put it close, like make it to where when you take your bucket outside after your evening meal, you only have to walk like 10 feet and there it is. And so like it's a part of your life in your daily activities, just like the trash can is. Secondly, water it. Oh my gosh, that's definitely number 2. People forget that microorganisms they don't know, but microorganisms have this film around their body of water. And in order for them to reproduce and to properly decompose, that water has to be around all the other parts so that they can move amongst the pile and decompose the material with water. And like every living organism, we need water. So water your pile and make sure it stays wet.
Do you water more frequently than you turn the pile, or at the same rate?
At the same rate. It's really hard to get. So if you have a pile that is 4 feet high, and you have this beautiful like bio cover over it, and it's looking great, it's really hard to get water in it from the top, because what happens is, and here, let me come over here. I saved this image for you guys. It kind of tells you another reason why. Here we go. Okay, let me share my screen real quick because this is a great way to kind of explain what I'm talking about. Okay, so you can see this now right here, this image. All right. Right here is a 3 to 4 feet high compost. Let me present this because it's going to mess up compost pile. And there's a reason why we say, hey, it has to be that size. It's because the compost pile can protect itself from elements at that size. Like if you have a torrential downpour, the compost pile will be able to keep itself from being completely soggy mess. If it's super cold outside, the compost pile will be able to stay hot in the center as long as it's at this size, because this is how it protects itself. And what happens is, so you have your base of compost of your carbon material here. You have this nice bio cover, or the cover that you're covering your food scraps with, so nothing's exposed. Your layering system is in here. It's 3 to 4 feet high. This is at its thermal, like its best thermal mass. And I don't know if anyone knows like how a wood stove works, like a wood stove in your house where you have you have to have air venting into the wood stove, the fireplace, and then the heat goes up. If you cut off the air going in, then you're going to have a smoky mess and the heat can't go up, right? This same system happens in a compost pile when it's built to 3 or 4 feet high. It has this natural airflow movement that happens in the pile. And so with this airflow movement and it being covered up in like a dome shape, it can protect itself from heavy rain and snow and cold weather, because it's able to, they have found out that this is the minimum size for it to do that.
Nice. I love this graphic, by the way. Did you make that or did you take that?
So this is from, it says Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and I kind of said on my
Nice. Okay.
On my past PowerPoints, they have amazing resources that you can use for free. You just have to source them. They also are huge at composting advocates, and like they're great. They have so much material for education. But I turned this image into what I'm trying to tell you here. I put the like arrows and I colored it basically. I made all the
I really
highlights.
get this. It resonates.
Yay! Well, that was the point whenever I was trying to
A little bit of
explain.
color really helps.
It does.
And I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
Which is, so you've made this beautiful compost. I feel like, if I get a good finished product, I can't wait to get it on my garden bed. But this person is asking, how long does compost stay active and beneficial to your garden? Like, what if someone had so much maybe that it's sitting, not being used? Like, how long does the finished product stay good?
Yeah. I'm glad someone asked this question because it is very good. So the finished product of compost can actually stay active for quite a while. As long as it is being moist, you have to keep it have some water in it. Now, with that said, with this workshop that I just did over the weekend, we looked at compost that had been dry for many months. And when I looked at it underneath the microscope, there were tons of like empty shells and things had definitely died off. But there were also microbes that were dormant in there. And as soon as we added water to it and we got it rehydrated, it all started coming back to life, which was really cool. But that compost itself had a lot of microorganisms, so that helped out. But it just shows that like even when compost is dry, if you put water to it, it can come back to life because some microorganisms just go dormant. Now, if you leave your compost sitting on your farm for a while on a tarp, just know that the microorganisms, they'll run out of food. which will most likely happen. Like they'll eat up all the organic material. I don't know if you've ever seen compost that kind of looks like sand, or like it's very like minerally, or it doesn't have a lot of holding capacity to it when you squeeze it. It just kind of, it's very crumbly. The best thing to represent it is kind of like sand.
Okay.
What happened is microorganisms, they basically ate up all the organic matter and everything they could, and you're left with minerals now. And that at that point, you could use that as like a mulch if you want still, but it may not have a lot of microbial life.
Okay.
Um, so, and as far as like beneficial to your garden, compost is always beneficial to your garden. The, for it to be the most beneficial for your garden is to make sure you have living roots in the ground. If you do a compost application to your garden over winter, that's great. Like the snow will come on top of it and it will protect it and it'll be fine in Missouri. Now, if you put your compost on the garden in like spring or late spring, and then you don't put anything in it and it kind of bakes in the sun for a while, those microorganisms will, like, you may kill some, but they will try to move into the soil. So you've inoculated the soil below, which is great. But now what you have on top probably is just like a mulch material, which is beneficial to your garden as well.
Mhm.
So, but the best thing to do, I mean, there's no best, it's always good for you because water can hold its weight can hold 5 times its weight in water, compost can. So even when you're adding it to your garden or to the grass or anything, you're making your infiltration rate of your water holding capacity way higher, even if you're not going to use it for growing food. I mean, it also, I think it said in the past, like it filters out toxins in the soil, so you can put it on and just use it as a way to remediate areas that have heavy metals or have different types of soil toxicity issues. I mean, it can be used for a lot of things besides gardens, just to let you know. And we talk about that in other workshops too. But compost, living roots combined is going to be the most beneficial for your garden because you're feeding the microorganisms that are alive in your soil through the roots of the plants. And then you're inoculating it with the compost. Then also you're applying, I mean, compost does have nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium in it too. So you're giving your plants a little bit of boost that way as well. So I hope
A
that
great way to
answers.
end the workshop. So many benefits. It's always beneficial to your garden. So
Mm-hmm.
that's encouraging. I think what I'm taking away, besides a ton of notes on this, is that I think people need a little bit more encouragement and
Uh-huh.
we'll scoot out the door, like make it part. We should all be getting outside a little bit during the day anyway. I know
Yeah.
that's a struggle for some people, but like make it a routine, like take a little walk outside, take a look at your pile and yeah, build it into your routine. That will be my
Yeah.
motivation for our pile that needs a little bit more love. And I do love it and I'm determined.
Yeah.
So
Yes. And my next experiment to do is, because I'm all about trying to help people like create compost piles, right? And how can we do it the easiest way? And I was thinking, even if you get a little dump of mulch, right? And you have someone dump a bunch of mulch in your compost area and it's already at 3 to 4 feet high, you could probably just go in there, lift up your dig a hole in that mulch pile, put all your food scraps in there, make sure put some water in there, cover it back up, right? And then I bet by the time you come back out there a week later, half of it, if not more, is decomposed. And then you do it again. And you cover it and you put your compost in there, cover it up, water it, and keep an eye on it and do it again. You will start to make like soil. Oh, that gave me a question. Something that we didn't go over, which I really think it's important. Someone asked, what's the difference between compost and soil? Did
okay.
you see that question on there? Oh, I
It
know we're
was,
over
yeah,
time.
it was on there. Go ahead.
It's just, this is a question that I think was really important, especially for gardeners, because there is a big difference. Soil is a whole structure of sand, silt, and clay and organic material. And compost is what they call like humus or organic material in itself. It does not have, it can have minerals in it. Like it can have sand, silt, and clay when it sits for a long time, or depending on what you use. But soil in itself, which, oh, here, oops, let me go back here. Here, I'll show you. It's made up of air, water, sand, silt, and clay. Can you see? Did I stop sharing?
Yeah, you stopped sharing.
Yeah, come over here. Okay.
There we go.
So it's made up of air, water, sand, silt, and clay. This is the ideal soil profile if you have 5% or more of organic material. This is kind of like the soil that you would get in the background. So having these elements in soil is what makes soil right here. And sand, silt, and clay is these particles right here. Sand is the biggest, silt is in the middle, clay is the smallest. That's why we get clay pans. And why we have issues is because when we till, it's like a flour. Like when you put flour in your bowl and then you put water on it, and then it creates this like, really thick thing. The same thing happens when you till and you in the clay soil, or you disturb it and then it rains, it turns into that like mushy thing that you're going to get from flour and water, because all the clay particles just went to the surface and they're very, very tiny. And so that's another reason why we can't till in Missouri, because we have very heavy clay soils. But right here is compost, which is made up of all that organic material, the food scraps. It's made up of living organisms. Some are also dead. It's made up of actively decomposition things. And so this is the difference right here. Soil, sand, silt, and clay, air and water. Compost is carbon, nitrogen, air, and water. But it's all organic material that is coming together to make what we call humus, which is another form of organic material that we put on the soil. So there are two different things. Like compost doesn't have a profile. Soil has all these different horizons and soil profiles to it. It also has different types of aggregates. Compost does have aggregates as well, but not in a little bit different form than soil. So that could be I think we've done a lecture over that a little bit. So if you're interested in more of that, I'm pretty sure there is one on this one is, I love this image here. This is like our soils, right? What happens is we've lost the air and the water in our soils and the organic matter right here. This is what we need to incorporate back to soil organic matter, and which will then help to increase water holding capacity in our air exchange. When you till, you take out the air as well.
Yeah. Compact, that's a big one. I hear people talk about that a lot.
I know, like Adam was just talking about that, and I was like, compost helps that. Regenerative agriculture practices help that. So,
well, we are up on time, so I just want to say thank you again so much for sharing your knowledge and the time to prepare like you do. It's so appreciated, and it really shows. And thanks to everyone for watching this, and thank you so much for sending your questions. This was fun. I'm excited to share all the little tidbits of information. So
yes, me too. Thank you so much for having me. We've enjoyed all this series, and if anyone has any questions, you can always reach out to me or the Compost Collective, and we love answering questions and we love doing these workshops. So thank you.
Excellent. All right. Have a good night.